Good night, everybody, and welcome to the Dynasty365 show. Guys, we have got a great show for you here tonight. As always, we have got Tyler Heil over here in the house. We have got our CEO of Fantasy and Frames, Jorge Edwards. Guys, our special guest tonight is Heath Cummings from CBS Sports. I'm your host, Stacy Perez. Guys, tonight we're going to be talking about some sell candidates for your Dynasty leagues. So let's get to it. Before we get started, make sure that you have hit that subscribe button for YouTube. You are following us all over social media over at Fantasy and Frames. Also, check out our website, fantasyandframes.com, for more amazing fantasy football advice from the whole crew here. Guys, tonight we are welcoming Heath Cummings. Thank you so much for spending your evening with us. How are you doing?
I am very happy to be here. Looking forward to talking some Dynasty.
Nice. Yeah, so we're going to have a good time tonight. I think we got a fun little show for you guys. Guys, make sure if you're not following Heath already, you are doing so. You can see him on the screen here. You can see his Twitter handle. It's at Heath Cummings Senior SR there. So make sure to give him a follow. Heath, before we get started, there's a little part in the show called Friendly Banter. And I like to take a fun little question that I've thought of kind of throughout the week and ask everybody their thoughts before we get started talking about our actual topic for the night. But tonight I have a question just for you. I was doing some slightly non-creepy research to prepare myself for the show, and I came across a very special Instagram barbecue-themed account that you might have.
Yep.
Is that your Heath's Meats?
Yes, doesn't sound creepy at all.
No. No, I was very intrigued. I saw barbecue, and that is something near and dear to my heart. I love nothing more than like driving around town and finding like the hole-in-the-wall barbecue places. And like to this day, I can tell you like the best ribs I've ever had have been at this tiny little shack in Blairsville, Georgia, where I can still like taste it when I think about it. But so my question for you tonight, since you are a barbecue enthusiast, I would like for you to please rank barbecue styles from best to worst.
Okay, so I assume we're talking like regionally,
Yes.
and I'm sure there are places that have barbecue that I've not tried, but I'm not going to rank them because they don't count because I've not tried them. Kansas City is first by a clear margin. St. Louis is last by a clear margin, and everybody else is tied for second. No. In all seriousness, I would probably put Texas second, or Oklahoma. Somebody's going to get mad at me because there's probably some distinguishable difference between Texas and Oklahoma that I'm unaware of. But that region would come right behind Kansas City. Carolina barbecue is good. I've had that and I've enjoyed it. It's not my favorite, but definitely better. Memphis has got good barbecue. Yeah, there it is. I'm up for debate.
Very nice. So guys, if you have any issue, if you have any disagreements there, if Heath has offended your barbecue in your particular location, make sure you can add him at Heath Cummings Senior on there. That's where you can find him. Guys, make sure to drop your questions for us tonight into the chat. I see Gator is already in there. Heath Meats, he wants smoked or grilled.
Yes. Absolutely, 100%. I've got I've had back-to-back now. I'll do a little infomercial. Char griller side box. It's got a huge area for the meat, and then you've got the side box over there for the wood. And you can do either one. It's a little bit tricky if you smoke meat all day and then wake up the next day and want to like grill steaks and you forgot to clean it out the night before, and you can start some pretty serious grease fires. But other than that, it works fantastic for doing both. It takes I run one out in about 2 to 3 years. We smoke and grill a lot of meat here.
Nice. Now, do you do that for like Thanksgiving? Do you do like a smoked turkey or anything like that?
I have done a smoked turkey, I think twice, and it was better than the turkey in the oven. But also, most Thanksgivings I am working, and so I haven't done that for a while. But yeah, it's smoked turkey. It's not easy, but if you do it right, it's perfect.
Jorge, I think you have a barbecue question that you wanted to ask you.
Yeah, so I have a regional barbecue question, and of course, the region is like on the other side of the world. What are your thoughts on Korean barbecue, especially for chicken, like the crunchy chicken wings there? Is that something that's just sacrilege in barbecue circles for you, or is that something that's like, yeah, that's okay. I can go with that.
Yeah, I am. I grew up in rural Missouri. I live in Boca Raton, Florida now, so people think I'm very cultured. But I grew up, I was born in a town with about 3,000 people. I then moved to a town with about 8,000 people and graduated high school from there and lived there until I moved here about 8 years ago. All of that's to say is my knowledge of foods from around the world was already explained earlier when I talked about the regional barbecue rankings. I honestly, I do not think I've ever had Korean barbecue.
Oh wow! So I don't know if they have them in Florida, but there's this chain called Banchan that's pretty popular, at least in the Mid-Atlantic. So if you ever see there,
I have never seen anything like that driving around, but I'll keep my eyes open.
Yeah, try these soy garlic Banchan wings. They're crunchy, they're sweet, but a little spice to them. Definitely highly recommend.
I do have one question for you, Heath. What are you drinking? I saw you had a beer there.
It's actually not a beer. It's wow, this is gonna like knock me down 10 points probably. It's a hibiscus LaCroix.
Oh
man,
yeah,
okay.
no,
it's all right. I have cranberry lime seltzer. So.
Yeah, it was. We went to Fort Myers, Florida last weekend for a basketball tournament, and it was Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and we stayed Monday. And it was my son and then an older team. So we had 40 kids in the same hotel and then all their families there for was kind of our end of season basketball tournament a couple hours away. Coached 8 basketball games in 3 days and pretty much drank beer the rest of the time. So nice. I'm trying to normalize from that the next couple of days.
I feel like you'd have been justified drinking beer the entire time with that many games.
Yeah, it was like dealing with middle school boys and like especially when they're not winning. I get very thirsty coaching middle school boys basketball.
Yeah, I'll just say a short story here. My wife's mother was her Girl Scout leader, like all throughout grade school and high school, and the standard was they had leader juice that the girls were not allowed to touch at all times. There were water bottles marked with leader juice that the Girl Scouts did not drink. So, if you want to learn anything from that, Heath, I'd say go ahead.
That sounds like my kind of Girl Scout troop. Pro show. All right, guys. So tonight, like I said, we're going to be talking about some sell candidates for your Dynasty teams this year. So some trade bait targets, really, so to speak. So we know like Dynasty is all about determining value of players picks, who you want to acquire for your team at the right value. And so I want to talk about some guys that, you could potentially use to get maybe some draft capital for yourself. We're kind of going to go in a little bit of a round robin style. Everybody pick a player, talk about them and why they're a sell, why you think they're a sell, and what potentially you think you could get for them. Guys, if you are in the chat and you have some trades that maybe about some of these players that we're going to talk about, throw them up there. I like to see kind of what they're going for in out in the public, out in these fantasy streets. Want to get some more info from you guys. So Heath, guest of honor, I'm going to start with you. Who is your first trade bait player?
Yeah, well, I don't know specifically. I'm supposed to choose players from the list or have my own. I do actually have some of my own, but you
have your own. You do some of your own.
Yeah, but there was one that would have been on my list absolutely that I saw on the list. So I'm going to steal that from whoever was going to talk about it. I don't even know. Sorry, it's okay if you hate me. You can still say all the things you're going to say. I'll say different things. I think Alexander Madison, maybe not today, this second, but is like moments away from being immediate sell candidate. I'm always skeptical of backs, and Tony Pollard could be in this same range of those backs that get to age 25, 26, 27, and they've been backups, and then the starter leaves, and we think, well, they're just going to do all of the things that the starter did. And there's generally a reason that one of the guys was the starter and the other guy was the backup. So I think you should definitely expect less efficiency from Madison in terms of Cook. And I think probably you're going to see less total volume. I think the Vikings are going to be much less likely to give him the number of touches that they gave Dalvin Cook. And so as soon as, and maybe you don't have to do this, maybe people have already accepted. I know we were talking about this on our on Fantasy Football Today Dynasty on Tuesday, and Dave had actually mentioned he on air had offered somebody DeAndre Hopkins for Alexander Madison and couldn't get the deal done. And so if I've got Alexander Madison and that's the price range, I am, if I'm a rebuilder and he was just kind of sitting on my bench and I'm not quite ready yet, I'm going to see if I can go get a 2024 first. I'd like to get it now. If I can't, then as soon as Cook is released, I'll go try to get it.
So let me ask you a question about Madison, because this is where I kind of struggle with him. So do you think that he is like actually like a good running back, or is he just he's in a great spot? You know, he can kind of step into that role if something happens to Dalvin Cook. You know, he's got that opportunity. Do you think it's more of that, or do you think that he's an actor that he would produce regardless of where he would be?
I think we went way too far with the running backs don't matter thing, because there's a lot of them that really do, and there's some of them that are so bad that they do. But there's also there's always some truth behind those things as well. I think we're probably 60 to 70% of the backs that are just kind of the same, and I think he's part of that group. Like if he's in a role where someone's giving him 300 touches per game, then he is a must-start running back. But I don't think he is going to force his way into that role if he has equal competition.
Yeah. So we've got the Equinox, I hope I'm saying that right, FF, in the chat there, saying he's been seeing mostly seconds for Madison. Do you feel like that's a good value if somebody is looking to ship him off?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't sell Madison for a second right now. And I think that's a good point for all these guys that we're going to talk about on the show is like, don't accept less in June than you think somebody's worth. Don't accept even a little bit less, because we're going to get to September or October and somebody's going to be 3-1 or 4-2, and they're really going to be feeling good about things, and then they're going to lose a running back. And I think you'll get what you want then. So I wouldn't probably trade him for a second right now.
So just be patient.
Yep.
Hang tight on him. All right. Okay, Tyler, you are up next. Who's your guy?
All right, I'm going to come in hot because I feel like this, maybe this is controversial, maybe it's not, but I think Travis Etienne is a sell.
Okay.
To answer the question, why is he a sell? I think he's at his value peak. He's currently an RB7. That's according to ADP on DLF. He is the RB7, sorry. Just watching them play, I do not think Doug Peterson, who did not draft him, by the way, sees him as that bell cow back. And when you're the RB7, you're being drafted and being valued as a bell cow back. I mean, for God's sakes, he lost significant passing game work to JaMychal Hasty last year. Over the second half of the season, he averaged 2.1 targets per game. That's 35.7 targets over an entire season. Nick Chubb, who is not a pass-catching back, has totaled more than 35.7 targets twice in his career. So I don't love how that trend looked last year. Red zone rushing, Etienne totaled 10 attempts last year. It's not bad. 10 attempts inside the 5, not in the red zone. Sorry, inside the 5. Nothing to scoff at. Ties him with A.J. Dillon. It's okay. Trevor Lawrence had 6. So that could very well shoot up. And you bring in Roschon Johnson, who's a strong runner. He could start stealing some of those goal line carries. I'll be curious to see what happens when they have that capable backup with Roschon Johnson and not JaMychal Hasty. I mean, I think we all know what JaMychal Hasty is. He's fine. And this isn't a Travis Etienne is dead argument. It's really not. It's just that if someone is a higher value than I deem them to be, and that I think they will ever get higher than, I feel they are a sell. And he's a 24-year-old running back going into year 3, completely missed year 1. And he has a guy nipping at his heels. I just don't think he's worth the RB7. And I think if you can get that RB7 value, you should sell him.
All right. So I have a question for you about Travis Etienne, because this was kind of on my mind when I had him in the sheet. I've never been a huge Travis Etienne fan. And I've always kind of felt like he was overrated a little bit, but I just couldn't really put a finger on why I felt that way. Tell me, why do you think people have him valued so high?
So I think it's timing and scenario. Beginning of last year, people were not super excited for Travis Etienne because, Urban Meyer wanted him, and then Urban Meyer got kicked out the door.
Literally.
Doug Peterson came in. Yeah. I'm sure what Josh Lambo would have loved to kick him. Is that the right kicker?
Yeah, Josh Lambo helps.
But timing and scenario. So they had James Robinson. He was splitting work with James Robinson last year. They sold James Robinson to the Patriots. They traded him. Right? No, Jets. He's on the Patriots now. They traded him to the Jets. And immediately Etienne had boom, 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 just awesome games. Almost RB1 weeks, 3 weeks in a row. Then the rest of the season, he was meh. He had a couple 100-yard games, but it wasn't much more than that. And I think those 3 games right after James Robinson got traded, where he was just absolutely on fire, that just kind of drove the narrative of what he is. And I don't think he's quite that.
All right. So Chalupa Batman up in the chat wants to know if it is crazy to sell DK Metcalf. Heath, what do you think? Do you think it'd be crazy to sell him?
I don't think it's crazy to sell him at all, because I do think that, if JSN is what we think he is, DK is not going to see a smaller target share than he did last year. JSN is the type of wide receiver who is eventually going to command a larger target share than a wide receiver like DK Metcalf. And it seems like everyone adjusted down Jackson Smith and Jigba when he got drafted to Seattle because of the target competition of DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. And everybody was fine with burying Tyler Lockett because we do that every time about this year, and then he outperforms ADP every year. But I haven't seen a lot of people really move the needle on where DK Metcalf is really in Redraft or in Dynasty. And I haven't a lot. I've got DK at wide receiver. Okay, I guess I have a little bit. I've got him at wide receiver 17. I had him at wide receiver 15 earlier in the offseason. Yeah, if you can get top 12 wide receiver value for him, I would sell.
All right. So I think Tyler, we talked about that a few episodes ago about not being, overly attached to particular players and kind of, leaving them open to, sell if need be, if it made sense for your team. So I guess, in that regard, probably anybody potentially could be a sell. But
always.
Yeah.
Everyone is at risk.
Everyone's at risk. You're all replaceable. Jorge, who is your guy?
So my guy is Aaron Jones, and I get it. Running backs in the proverbial age 28, 29 years tend to fall off narrative. I get it. And I say narrative, but we have plenty of examples where that's from. But he's still going to be heavily involved in this Green Bay offense, I believe, especially without Aaron Rodgers. Now, of course, I say that under the assumption that I'm making that this isn't going to be a fun and gun, throwing it down the field type of offense with Jordan Love, because quite frankly, we don't really know what to expect until we actually see it with Jordan Love, although practice reports haven't exactly been instilling a lot of confidence in that narrative where they're going to be a high passing volume offense. In 2022, we saw Jones have a career high in rushing yards with a 5.3 yards per carry average. And we saw a career high in targets also, especially with these short dump off passes. His usage, his productivity, it just keeps going up and up. And it's, it went up considerably from the year before, but it's just consistent. He's maintaining that. And, if I'm a contending team, I want to get the discount on Aaron Jones now before he goes off for a 30-point game. And then, his standard, 19-point, 18-point games, and whether you're talking about PPR or half PPR, the receiving upside is there. We saw last year also that a lot of people, including myself, were anticipating this being a 1A, 1B situation to start the year with A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones. And it was mostly the Aaron Jones show until down the stretch where they realized, hey, this passing attack isn't working. Let's just go with the 2 best players we have at this position on the field, which are Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. So they both found success there. When we talk about what we could get for Aaron Jones. According to DLF, his rookie value pick is a mid first round pick, 2023. His ADP, his startup ADP, has him going around players like Cam Akers, Mike Evans, and Joe Mixon. To be honest with you, I'd rather have Aaron Jones over either all of those. So if I'm going to be getting rid of Aaron Jones, I'm going to be doing it for picks. I don't think you can make the. I'm sure somebody can make the argument somewhere that they could make Cam Akers, Mike Evans, and Joe Mixon, and maybe a second or some combination thereof be comparable for Aaron Jones. But I just think Aaron Jones is just going to be too good. He's too heavily relied upon in Green Bay, and he's probably going to be more relied upon this year. So if I can get something, especially for this, with again, DLF is the average of what they're saying. Obviously, it's not the be all end all. Rookie pick value, just pick value in general is all league dependent, in my opinion. So that being the case, if I can get something close to that, I'm moving them. But I could definitely see the case here. And Heath, you alluded to it later. Don't pass up on something you can get down the road, right? You probably get more for Aaron Jones in season, especially for those contenders looking to get over the hump at that point. So he's my player, one of the players I'm looking at getting rid of, but I would not undersell his value, especially down the stretch of the season.
So I like what you said about like value being like league dependent. I think there's a lot of like to take in there, because you got to know who you're playing with. You got to know the people in your league and what they're willing to pay for things. And, maybe somebody's a big Packer fan, right? And maybe they would definitely go after Aaron Jones if they could get him. And maybe you could, try to offload him that way. We have a question in the chat before we get to my player. Das Equinox, I think I added an S in your name, but that's okay. He wants to know how we feel about Ken Walker with Charbonnet, my favorite Charbonnet, in the mix now. Heath, what do you think about that Seattle situation?
I'm scared to death. Pete Carroll is deceived us so many times in so many different ways. And the thing is, like, a lot of people don't like Pete Carroll. I think he's a really good football coach. I'd love to play for Pete Carroll, but he also just lies to us all the time. And I just don't think there's any way to spin it as a positive for them to invest in a back like Charbonnet, who is, I think, more likely to be better than Ken Walker in the passing game and quite likely to be better than Ken Walker in the short yardage game. Those are two kind of important areas when it comes to scoring fantasy points. That being said, still, and I think it kind of goes back to the ETN thing as well, like, none of these guys that are under 25 years old do we have any reason to believe they are or will be workhorse running backs. I don't know that that's going to exist when these guys get to be like all the workhorses, except for, I think, 4 guys: Bijan, Jonathan Taylor, Breece Hall, and I'll throw in Josh Jacobs as guys who are 25 or younger and workhorses. All the rest of them are 27, 28, 29 years old, guys that if you're not contending, you need to sell. And so I end up with guys like ETN and Ken Walker, both still in my top 12 in Dynasty. And I kind of agree with what Tyler said earlier, that if it's a top 12 back in Dynasty, he ought to be a workhorse. But all the workhorses are almost as old as me. Well, that's not true. I could almost be their dad. But still, they're too old for a running back.
Jorge, I think you had a question about Seattle's backfield, right?
Yeah, so I wanted to pick your brain, Heath, regarding this, and I'm glad this question came up here. We talk about Walker, we talk about Charbonnet. It's almost like the Spider-Man meme where people are just pointing at each other, right? Mm-hmm. And, I kind of like the drafting of Kenny McIntosh actually in that backfield later on in the draft, especially for PPR leagues as like a flex, or you have a couple flex spots. Could you speak to Kenny McIntosh at all, or do you think that's just hogwash? Get that out of your mind. It's
I wouldn't say it's hogwash, because it seems like one of the Seahawks backs gets injured by week 6 every year. But and maybe that was just because Rashad Penny was there. But I do think that Charbonnet is competent in the passing game, and it would be, man, don't put that 3 running back mess on us, please. we're gonna have share early downs between Ken Walker and Zach Charbonnet, and then we're gonna throw 45 passes to this other guy. I hope not. I don't want to downplay it, but I really hope not.
Translation, way to go, Jorge, putting that into the ether. We just exactly what we needed here. So I got you.
Stacy's been trying to make Kenny McIntosh happen for like 3 months.
I have. He is such for me. I have been trying to make him happen forever. Him and Charbonnet, like I can't shut up enough about those two. I loved those two so much. I gotta tell you, I was on draft night. I was just inconsolable. I was very upset. Oh my goodness. All right, guys. So my person that I want to talk about, and this just kills me to say that he's a sell, by the way, is my beloved former wide receiver 1 in Green Bay would be the incomparable Davante Adams. That's my guy. But look, right. So I think I almost started to say it might make a difference whether he's still either in Vegas or if he moves on to a different team. But honestly, I don't think it does make a difference. So look, it's not a great offense in Vegas, right? We don't even know who their quarterback's going to be at this point. I think Hoyer is their backup to Jimmy G if he doesn't take over, which I could get on a whole Patriots West thing and talk about how hilarious that it is that Hoyer is the backup there too. And then who knows, does Tom Brady come in at a certain point and become an owner player? In that case, we might have a different story, but, I was just thinking about, with Davante Adams, like, okay, so he goes from Rodgers to Carr, right? He's still very productive, but you could say, well, he's got history with Carr. They played together in college, all right? Honestly, though, he still produced with Jarrett Stidham. So I really think that he's probably quarterback proof at this point. And just as a little tangent on my love for Davante Adams, I quite frankly think that, he could produce with 1, anybody under center, and 2, you could put the entire defense on him and he's still coming down with the ball. So love Davante Adams. But he's getting old, right? He's going to be 30 going into this season, and we love our youth in Dynasty. He's still elite, though. So if you're looking to sell him, you can say, look, he's still elite. He had 1,500 yards last year, 14 touchdowns. But when you're looking to kind of say, okay, who can I move for my team to maybe get a little bit younger, that's probably a guy like that, right? Because that fall off can happen fast. And hopefully it doesn't happen this year for Davante, because I would love to see him play for a lot longer at a high level. But it could, right? So you kind of want to be a little bit ahead of that if you can. And, trade him now while that value is so high, right? If you're taking him off your team, right? If you're looking at your team, rather, I guess is what I'm trying to say, is that he's probably your wide receiver 1. Right. He is the best receiver on your team, hands down. So you're going to want something really good to replace that production. So if I'm trying to sell him, what I'm not settling for is anything less than a 1st-round pick, potentially higher end, right? With a younger current, maybe a number 2 wide receiver who's got some breakout potential, maybe like a Jahan Dotson, Jameson Williams kind of guy. That's what I would be looking for in a package. I think if I'm looking to sell Davante Adams, that's what I'd be willing to accept at that point for him. Like I said, as much as it pains me to sell Davante Adams, but like we talked about, Tyler, right? You can't be emotional. Everybody's for sale. You got to put everybody out there.
No one is indispensable.
Exactly.
I'll say this for him being quarterback proof. Let's remember he produced still when Brett Hundley came on for an injured Aaron Rodgers down the stretch, 2017, I believe.
I repressed that time from my memory. But yeah,
who's better, Brett Hundley or 35-year-old Brian Hoyer?
Ooh.
Brett Hundley.
Is it rude of me to say who's better, Brett Hundley or Jordan Love, or is that
we don't know that yet?
Yeah, we don't know. We don't know the answer to that.
That should tell you all you need to know, right? Like, we should be saying a 1st-round pick has displayed something over the course of well, I digress.
Jordan Love catching strays.
I know.
Oh my goodness. All right, Heath, you are up. Who is your 2nd player?
I'm going to go with another running back. I'm going with Ramondre Stevenson, and this will make some people in the chat angry probably. I know he is a dynasty darling, maybe even a top 12 running back amongst the consensus. I'm not sure. I do not have him as a top 12 running back. I do not believe that 1 year of Bill Belichick using the same guy, kind of the same guy. People should remember we went into last year drafting Damian Harris ahead of Ramondre Stevenson. It took Harris getting hurt for this to happen. But he finally had the same guy leading the team in rushing and receiving out of the backfield. And everyone's just acted like that's going to remain the same. there's already reports coming out that they really would like to see Ty Montgomery back in that third down role, which Ty Montgomery had that role at the beginning of last year. Now, I don't think Ty Montgomery can actually stay healthy, but there have been, and I've got to read a tweet here from back in May because this is I looked this up about 3 weeks ago. There have been 8 running backs who averaged less than 5 yards per target with 80 plus targets. Ramondre's the 8th. Each of the prior 7 lost at least 12 targets the next year. On average, they lost about 30 targets the next year. Generally speaking, if you're as inefficient with your targets as Ramondre was last year, you do not get as many targets the following year. If that happens to him, he becomes Damian Harris.
That makes me very nervous, Heath. I've taken a lot of Ramondre lately. But looks like Chalupa Batman there in the chat, death taxes and never trust a Pats running back for fantasy. You may not be wrong there. That's not a wrong statement. Oh my goodness. All right, Tyler, talk to me about your person.
All right. I have another running back, and I'm going to say it's DeAndre Swift.
Ooh.
Kind of a theme. I think all these guys are at their value peak personally. Swift is still the RB16, which still seems kind of high for a guy that a mediocre to above average team just punted into the sun for a 5th round pick. Like it just completely it did not care. He's still living off his draft status. He's living off his name. We just remember the rookie drafts a few years ago where it was like, oh, is it Jonathan Taylor or is it DeAndre Swift? Oh, but Clyde Edwards-Helaire landed in a really good spot. Like, no. DeAndre Swift has not been good. He just hasn't. He's been injured, which is not helpful for the running back position. He's going to turn 25 at the end of the season. Last year, he was overtaken by Jamal Williams. I love Jamal Williams. Great guy. Super swaggy. He's awesome. Love him. You can't say a bad word about him. He's a slightly above average running back. And he just took DeAndre Swift's job last year. On top of that, Swift is not the best running back in Philadelphia. You know, I mean, Rashad Penny obviously has the injury concern. It's a major concern. When he is on the field, Rashad Penny is freaking awesome, man. I don't care what you say. He is a blast to watch. He is an awesome football player. And those 4 games behind that Philly offensive line are going to be godlike. And I'm so excited.
Anyway. Those 4 games behind Philly.
I don't know what you're talking about. But on top of that, Swift just hasn't been great. His yards per carry average were 4.6, 4.1 until this year when he was 5.5 behind one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. And it only took 99 carries to do that. I mean, there is a correlation between volume and efficiency, and Swift's volume went down. His efficiency went up because when his volume goes up, he's not very efficient and he's not very good. Swift is a good pass catching back. He can fill that role for Philly. He can fill that role wherever he is. He's been very efficient, high volume, about 8-ish yards per carry for his career. So I like him there, but he's not the RB16. He's a complimentary back. That's what he is. So if you can get RB16 value for DeAndre Swift, I kind of looked at it, again, echoing what Jorge said. Trade analyzers are not the end-all be-all of Dynasty Fantasy Football. But I threw it into DLF. You could sell DeAndre Swift in a 24 third for Devon A-Chain, Kendry Miller in a 24 second. Like, yeah, give me that. Come on. Give me all that. So, yeah, I think DeAndre Swift is overvalued right now. So I will sell him.
All right. So, Jorge, I'm going to ask you this question about DeAndre Swift. Do you think the fact that Penny and Scott and Gainwell are all there as part of that group in Philly, do you think that lowers the value of what you can get for Swift?
I think Tyler's argument just lowered the value of what you can get for Swift, aka just not very good. He sucks. He's horrible. Just throw,
say that.
Well, I mean, you basically did. You basically just did. Look, I agree with you that is he a running back 16? No, but I guess it depends on what you're looking for, right? If you're looking for him to be your RB1, I think that's not reasonable. If you're looking for somebody to be a flex option, look, like I understand your point. With more opportunity, efficiency goes down. With less opportunity, efficiency goes up. But you brought up a very good point about Philadelphia and Rashad Penny. If he stays healthy, I don't even know if that's real wood I'm knocking on, but let's just pretend that it is. He doesn't have to take on a big workload in Philadelphia. He can keep still having that same type of role that he had in Detroit. Now he's just running behind a really good offensive line and has a mobile quarterback to help keep defenses honest. I'm not as low, I guess, on Swift as a fantasy asset. I understand your point. You're talking about RB16 value and what you can get for an RB16. But as far as trying to sell him to somebody else, I wouldn't say that he's not useful for fantasy, or he definitely has the upside there, even in a limited capacity.
All right.
That's fair. I don't think he's not useful. This is all about value for me. I don't think he's RB16.
But Tyler would just punt him into the sun if given the opportunity.
Nah, the Lions already did that.
That's true. They did. Okay. Jorge, I'm going to keep it with you. Who is your number 2?
So mine is Cooper Kupp. And again, I want to emphasize, we're talking Dynasty, not Redraft. In case the show title Dynasty 365 didn't give it away. Last year, he was the wide receiver 1 through when he was playing in weeks 1 through 10. Half PPR, 18.2 points per game. Again, weeks 1 through 10. This is courtesy of PFF. Wide receiver 3 in catchable targets. Wide receiver 3 in 100-yard plus games. Wide receiver 3 in catch percentage. Wide receiver 5 in receiving yards. Wide receiver 3 in points per snap. Why would I possibly want to get rid of this excellent player? Look, the reason is he's entering his 30-year-old season. Not his 30-year-old season. He will be 30 years old this season. I think his value is not going to get any higher than it already is, except when he goes off for a string of games this fall. Then his value will be really high. But then we have to start asking ourselves, what's the situation going on in Los Angeles right now? Have they done anything to fix that offensive line last year, which pass blocking unit was ranked by PFF as the 24th best, if you want to call it that, in the NFL? It's Matthew Stafford. Obviously, there's a connection between Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp. How long is Matthew Stafford going to be there? He just came off of dealing with an injury all year last year. Is Jared Stidham the guy who's going to take him to the promised land in a couple of seasons? If that was to happen, I don't know what embarrassing thing I would have to do on air, but I would probably do it because I don't have exactly all the faith in Jared Stidham to be that next quarterback. So, then it's a situation where, Kupp, could he get traded? Where would he go? I don't know. A lot of uncertainty, a lot of I don't knows, not a lot of time to make that decision, given the fact that, yes, he is productive right now. He has a lot to offer right now. And so if I'm on a team that's rebuilding and I still am holding on to Cooper Kupp, having faith that, I want to keep this player because he's a really good player and he's the only thing keeping me competitive. Again, you, Stacy, you and Tyler mentioned it. You can't stay emotionally connected to these players. You got to realize when the value is there and the value is not. And me personally speaking, I would rather be a year ahead than a year too late.
I 100% agree with that part. I'm really trying to figure out if Jorge was throwing shade at Jarrett Stidham or Stetson Bennett.
Sorry, Stetson Bennett.
I'm not sure which one of those two is most mad at you right now. But no, I think if I have a chance to win the championship this year, I'm not selling Cooper Kupp because he might just be the best player in fantasy again. But if I'm even average, if I'm fighting for that 5-6 seed, it's time to sell Cooper Kupp because one injury and his value could be DeAndre Hopkins right now.
Yeah. Well, that's such an important thing too. It's like, where are you in your league? Are you competing this year? Are you not competing? So those are things that you need to keep in mind when you're thinking about who am I going to be selling, as far as my team goes when I'm trying to make these trades during the off season. Which one is older, Bennett or Stidham? Oh my gosh, I don't know the question. I don't know the
man.
answer to that. I mean,
No, it's got to be.
fascinated.
Stidham was in college forever too, wasn't he? Didn't he play at like 3 different schools?
oh my gosh.
I know he played at Auburn.
Ooh.
It's got to be very close though.
Which is
Jarrett Stidham is older.
By how much?
Jarrett Stidham will be 27 in August. Stetson Bennett will be 26 in October. So it's closer. It's closer than it should be.
They will both be 26 for a couple of months. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
Aren't you glad I messed up that name? And now we have this entire talking point to talk about how close in age
Stetson Bennett equals Jarrett Stidham, like Roshan Johnson equals Tank Bigsby, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. All right, so I think I'm gonna pick this running back in particular to talk about. So I'm gonna pick Najee Harris. So Najee Harris, even though he is a third-year player, right, and Dynasty does love our youth, like we talked about, he had over 1,000 yards in both of his first 2 years. There are very, very few running backs that can be in that true bell cow position, right? That there's not, too much, competition rather for their job. I'll get to Mr. Warren. Don't you worry. But just talking about Najee right now. So his offense, right, has a weaker quarterback, obviously, in Kenny Pickett. They rely heavily on that running game. One of the other reasons that I picked him as kind of a sell candidate is because of Jaylen Warren, right? He's back there. He's expected to take a bigger role in this offense this season. If you kind of believe the rumors that you're seeing online right now, listen to some of those interviews that they're doing, in camp. And, it hasn't happened just yet. But honestly, I mean, I kind of suspect that it might happen this year. So that's kind of why I put him on this list, because if Warren does come in and eat into some of that production, right, from Najee, or if Najee goes down, has an injury, and then, that job kind of gets taken from him a little bit, right, you've kind of missed out on the opportunity to move that player and get a little bit younger at that position. So that's kind of, again, why I put him on this list. Now, Fantasy Pros consensus has him ranked as RB14 and 38 total off the board. Don't worry, Chalupa Batman. I will get to Darnell Washington in just a minute. Let me finish up here, or else I'll get on a complete down the rabbit hole. But Najee, like I said, still young, so he's still valuable. But you want to trade like accordingly for what he is. So what you're thinking of, right, is maybe a pick this year, right? A first round pick this year, and perhaps maybe a 2024 first round pick, right? Nobody's gonna give you Bijan for Najee, okay? Nobody's gonna do that. But I think there are so many other running backs in this class that have value, that are going to be good players with potential, that you could go after with both that first round pick that you're getting anyway, plus that pick that you'll be getting in that trade. And then additionally with a pick that you might get next year. I think it's an obvious sell for me if I've got Najee. I'm looking to maybe upgrade a little bit, maybe get some more talent, some youth at that position. Chalupa Batman. All right, fine. You guys wanted me to do it. I'll do it. How big are Darnell Washington's hands, guys? Keith, you know how
11 inches.
11 inches, this big, right?
Which is the size
This
of a
big. We know. Yeah, we got
Okay. Chalupa Batman set me up for that. Crispy says Jaylen Warren is the blue cheese of running backs. I don't know what that means. You think you're being classy by putting it on your burger until you take a bite of it and violently vomit all over the place?
How dare you?
Christopher.
Blue cheese is delicious. What are you talking
Wow.
Chris, that was uncalled for.
That was a shot at blue cheese. That is wrong.
Exactly.
Who puts
Jaylen
blue
Warren
cheese on a burger? That's a monster.
What?
That's what they do in Canada.
I can't even.
Oh my goodness. That is violent.
You know what's interesting here about you talking about Najee here is that if you look at his efficiency metric last year, no bueno, right? He really is a product, at least so far in his career, a product of volume. Mm-hmm. And if you do hear the reports that are coming out of Steelers practices that they're going to get Jaylen Warren more involved, well, now you're getting somebody who can, take that efficiency and do something with it. It's going to be something, again, there are a whole lot of things we have to take into consideration with Pittsburgh, right? Can you pick it, take a few steps forward? Mm-hmm. Does he get more of these pass catchers involved? Does Allen Robinson become fantasy relevant again? I'm
No.
kidding. That was a joke. That was a joke. That was a joke.
I just looked
but-
at Najee Harris's efficiency. So you're right, Jorge. Holy crap! I knew it was bad. I didn't know it was that bad.
Yeah, it's no bueno. So yeah, I personally like that take, Stacey. That's good.
Thank you. But guys, don't tell the people how bad his efficiency is. Then we're gonna ruin all those trades that people are trying to trade Najee for.
I didn't like
Everyone's
Joel
getting up now.
DeAndre Swift on Najee Harris like Tyler did a few minutes ago. Didn't do that.
DeAndre Swift is freaking Jim Brown compared to Najee Harris.
Wow.
Whoa,
Just-
hot take. Somebody clip that.
I'm talking efficiency
45%.
here. Najee Harris is
45.
yards per attempt.
I mean, he's
Yards
definitely
per
not going to
attempt.
play as many games as Jim Brown, and Jim Brown only played like 6 years, but and they only played 14 games a year back then. But that's more than DeAndre Swift ever plays.
That's right. May he
100%.
rest in peace.
At the 45:09 mark, Jim Brown to DeAndre Swift. Check for our sound later on.
Write that one down. All right, we are going off the rails. Heath, bring us back. Who's your third guy?
Well, I don't know that this is going to bring us back. I went after one dynasty darling. Let's go after another. Trevor Lawrence.
Ooh.
Ooh.
There, and
How
I
dare you.
don't want to downplay the potential upside. I know we're all throwing the Urban Meyer year away, and I'm good with that. And he did have 5 games last year that were like 75% as good as Tua's best 5 games. So I understand why people are excited about that as well. But I just don't actually believe he's ever going to be a top 5 fantasy quarterback on a regular basis. He might have one spike year where he finishes as QB2 or QB3 because he has a 7% touchdown rate. But I think people might overestimate the difference between him being 23 and Patrick Mahomes being 27. Patrick Mahomes is probably going to be better for longer than him, or at least as long as him, because Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes. He's not. I think he's going to live in that QB7, QB8 range, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But the perception of him seems to have put him up in the Joe Burrow, maybe past Justin Fields. I'd rather have Fields or Jackson, who I think might be an actual real league winner for 3 or 4 years, and then go try to find another one, as opposed to just having a mid, I don't want to call Trevor Lawrence mid, but a mid QB1 for a decade.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Tyler, what are your thoughts about Trevor Lawrence?
Well, first of all, I think Heath and I's philosophy differs a little bit there.
Yeah.
I don't blame him for saying, "Hey, I want Justin Fields for 3 years. I want the QB2 for 3 years." Personally, if I'm playing Superflex, I would rather have the QB6 for 10 years.
Yeah.
You know, and that is a difference of philosophy. It's okay. No big deal there. But I think Trevor's awesome. I love him. I watch him play. Everything that he does is just fantastic personally. And I cannot wait to see what he can do with Calvin Ridley out wide and another year in that offense and better running game and all the above. I'm just really excited to see what Trevor Lawrence can do. And I think he has the potential to be that top 5 guy and be around that Joe Burrow class.
Ooh. Okay. Joey B. I mean, they both have excellent hair, just different styles.
Fantastic hair.
Right?
Well,
Yeah.
that's the thing is,
The
like,
tiebreaker.
I think the Calvin Ridley I might be underestimating the likelihood that Calvin Ridley is going to show up after 2 years and be peak Calvin Ridley again. If that happens, then that could be a complete game changer. I don't really think that we would talk about Joe Burrow as the elite fantasy option that we do if he didn't have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Like, that's just an insane advantage over the rest of the league. Now, Jalen Hurts has a similar one, but I'm not expecting Calvin Ridley and Christian Kirk to be Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown or Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. If they are, then that would definitely change the equation.
Let me ask you quick about Ridley because you brought him up. What are the odds that you think that he comes back like at Calvin Ridley, like what everybody's expecting him to be?
I'm the wrong guy to ask, so I think I'm the low guy on Calvin Ridley too. I think those odds definitely exist. I might say 33% that he comes back and plays 16 games
Yeah.
at that peak. I mean, he's had multiple major foot injuries, and he's already 27 or 28 years old. And I think what I'm letting bother me too much maybe is how Deshaun Watson, who looked like one of the best young quarterbacks ever in football, came back after a 2-year absence and was legitimately worse than Jacoby Brissett.
Significantly.
Yeah. So Nate absolutely wants you to know that he's got an excellent new coffee rub, and he will DM you the brand. He says go cheap.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to try it this time, Nate. I'm looking forward to it. Can't wait.
By the way, excellent use of the word mid. That is fantastic. We have this group on our podcast, Fourth and Frames, and they're trying to convince me, or I'm trying to convince them to do a flex segment in the fall where it's bussin', discussin', or mid.
Okay.
And my nephews, whenever I bring it up, are like, "Please stop talking like that." But I think it's catchy enough.
Yeah. I think, and I don't know, like where you guys are on the kid journey, if you have them or if you're going to have them or whatever. But I do this with basically, I've got a 23-year-old, a 21-year-old, and a 13-year-old. So I've done this for a while. But anytime a new phrase or motion or saying comes out, I just do it as often as possible so that they will stop.
Just nice.
I killed the dab in like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
I just over and over and over again until they hate it, and then they don't do it anymore.
You guys came for the Dynasty advice, but you also get bonus parenting and barbecue advice as well. I mean, what other show is offering that?
And Gen Z slang.
And Gen Z. See, we have a little bit for everybody. A little bit for everybody here on Dynasty365. Tyler, tell me about your number 3.
All right, this one I'm sad about. Tyreek Hill is my sell. He's currently the wide receiver 10. Well deserved. Frankly, he should probably be higher than the wide receiver 10 with where his value is. But the thing is, it's again the same argument, value peak. He's 29 years old. He openly said, I am retiring after the 2025 season. So he has 3 more seasons, hopefully 2 more seasons of Tyreek Hill-esque production. And he's at wide receiver 10 right now. There's simply no scenario where he progresses past that dynasty wide receiver 10 value. He's never going to be higher than he is right now. If you're going for a championship, same kind of discussion as Cooper Kupp that we had earlier. You can hang on to him. He is absolutely going to be a wide receiver 1 and help you win a championship this year. But like he said, if you're 5 seed, 6 seed, time to sell him. As sad as it is, Viking funeral for Tyreek's Hill fantasy value. Add on to that, you got Jalen Waddle coming on, who there is a world, I don't think it's this universe, but there's another universe where Jalen Waddle surpasses Tyreek Hill as the Dolphins wide receiver 1 this year. And I mean, the elephant in the room is his quarterback is 1 concussion away from retirement at any given time. So there is a lot of risk there. So what can you get for him? I would start at multiple firsts and go from there. I don't know if I'd get it. You might. I think you very well might, but you get first in a package with other players. So Tyreek Hill is wide receiver 10. He's worth every bit of that. He will return all of that value, whether it's in a trade or on your roster. So if you are not one of the favorites for a championship in your league, I think Tyreek Hill has to go, unfortunately. So I salute him. May he have a good 3 years until his retirement.
Till we have a Viking funeral for him.
For the Game of Thrones fans, I was picturing pushing him out onto a boat in the middle of the Trident and having Brendan Blackfish fire a fire arrow onto it. I don't know if anyone got that, but
they do now. They do now.
Oh yeah, Jalen Waddle will shoot that off for him.
Yeah,
my kids didn't watch that show, so I felt no need to run it. There. So
you got to try it, Heath. It's wonderful.
until the end, and then it's not.
Yeah, let's not talk about that.
Too soon. Jorge, who is your third guy?
So my guy's DJ Moore right now, to be honest with you. He's new location. Personally, I think it's the same situation, except, instead of having horrific quarterback play for both fantasy and real football, he's going to a situation where he's going to be on a team whose quarterback play is going to be great for fantasy and kind of unknown for real football. We don't exactly know what's going to happen here. Does Justin Fields take that next step? We saw all the running backs that they brought in free agency and Roshan Johnson getting drafted there. Is this going to be run first? Are they going to turn into a decently utilized passing game here? Rookie pick value over at DLF has him as a mid first. Hey, yeah, if I can get a mid first for DJ Moore, absolutely. Do I think he's worth the mid first? Not really. He's their wide receiver 21 in startup ADP. I'd probably, I would be willing to give up a second, and we can debate where high, mid, low for that. Obviously not low, but like probably mid to high. I know that's so ambiguous, but we talk about where he's at wide receiver 21. Let's talk about some wide receivers that fall below him. Terry McLaurin, we talked about Calvin Ridley, Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, Jahan Dotson. I'd rather, those guys, to be honest with you, than DJ Moore. I understand he's a talented wide receiver, but give me a talented wide receiver on a team that has a prolific passing quarterback. I'm not really, FF Chulabem, Heath is just going to get up and leave now. So I am ready to be the sacrificial lamb here, please. Heath, go for it.
I'm going to send you a bill for I need a new door. I don't know if you heard the dog, but I've trained my dog to attack when someone says to sell DJ Moore. And the dog just went crazy as soon as you started talking about it. I think DJ Moore has shown us, much like Stephon Diggs did before he got a new location, that he can, and much like we've seen with Tyler Lockett in Seattle as well. There's rare receivers that can have the high volume seasons and succeed on the short area targets, and can have the high ADOT seasons and have put up big numbers on fewer targets. I obviously have, and I don't know how many people listened to FFT or read anything I said last year, but I was the DJ Moore guy last year, and it went terribly wrong. And it was obviously, like we saw in the second half of the season, it was obviously Baker Mayfield's fault. He hates DJ Moore, just like you, Jorge. And I don't know why, but I think he's a superstar. I don't think this is that much different than Jalen Hurts getting A.J. Brown. I don't think this is that much different. And remember, Jalen Hurts didn't ever throw the ball before he got A.J. Brown either. People weren't sure how good he was as a passer. He got A.J. Brown, all of a sudden he's really good because everybody's open. I think that's going to happen with Justin Fields. And I don't necessarily, I certainly wouldn't trade him for a 2. As far as a mid-first value, I'd rather have Bijan. I'd rather have Gibbs. I have Jordan Addison and JSN both ahead of him. So but I wouldn't, there's not anybody else from this year's class. Now I'm sure next year's class is going to be better because it always is, until we get to it. But I'm offended, but I'll come back. It's okay.
My first year ever taking DJ Moore was last year, and I got to tell you, I didn't enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm sorry, that probably wasn't fun for you. No. I will promise you it was less fun for me. Being the guy that showed people to draft him in the 3rd round. It was a real crisis of confidence, but we're back. I've got a short memory, just like the corners that are going to get toasted by DJ Moore this year.
Ooh, I like it. Nate up in the chat saying we've been slandering DJ Moore for years. They wanted Robbie Anderson. How did that turn out? Do you mean Chosen Anderson?
Chosen
Anderson.
He has
who's Robbie?
They had to change his first name 3 different times so people would stop talking about how much better DJ Moore was.
And people would stop talking about the Sir Purr video.
That's the best video I've ever seen in my life, by the way. If you guys haven't looked that up, it's Robbie Anderson doesn't know who Surf Her is, and all the other guys on the bench have to explain it to him, and it's amazing.
What's that bear doing up there?
What?
That's your mascot? Oh, right. Yeah.
You guys call him that? It popped up on my TikTok again the other day, and I had to watch it a couple times. It's good stuff.
So fun fact actually about that stadium, I know it's completely random, Bank of America. They are a cashless stadium, so you can only use card to pay for things there. Fun fact.
But all the cashless places take phones now, right?
Yes.
So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Soon they'll just scan the chip in my wrist. It'll be fine.
Exactly.
That's what I have. You can scan it on your watch.
We'll all be plugged into the Matrix together, except for me, because Heath will make sure I'm not there because of my DJ Moore. So
Only DJ Moore fans allowed. All right, guys. Last but very not least, I'm gonna sell Evan Ingram. So I'm selling Evan Ingram. Why am I selling him? So he's gonna be 28 years old this year. You know, once you pass 25, it's kind of like Leonardo DiCaprio, right? Once you hit that past that birthday, get out of here, right? They don't want you. You're too old at that point. So Tyler, you're looking at me like you don't know what I'm talking about. Do you not know that Leonardo DiCaprio gets rid of all of his girlfriends once they hit 25?
Okay. No, sorry. I watch Leonardo DiCaprio's movies. I do not pay attention to pop culture.
Come on now.
come on. We all know this. This is
Don't act like you're above with over there. Okay.
I don't have time for pop culture.
No.
I have kids and I do this.
That's
all I do.
Heath, you know the DiCaprio stigma with him and dating.
Yeah.
Don't give me that.
Obviously, he gets rid of all of his girlfriends before they turn 25 years old, just like Stacy said.
Just gotta go. Don't let the door hit you. But last year he had a great year. Right? He had a great year last year. So this is why I'm telling you to sell him, because his rookie year he had a really good year. His that was 2017, by the way, which I couldn't believe it was 2017. 2017 he had 722 yards, 6 touchdowns. This year he had 890 yards, 5 touchdowns on 114 targets. That was 4th most in targets behind the big 3, Kelsey, Hawkinson, Andrews. Guys, 2018, 2019 had some injuries, but has bounced back. Guys, like we talked about with Ridley, right? Ridley's coming in. He's definitely going to take some of those targets. So this is why I'm saying Evan Ingram, right? Kind of go out on a high note with him. See if you can get somebody that's got a little bit of a short-term memory who maybe needs a tight end, needs some help at that position. Right now, DLF Dynasty consensus has him at tight end 16, which is 137 overall. And it puts him in between Michael Mayer, and Sam Laporta. So both those guys are rookies. They're great prospects. I love both of those guys. They're in good landing spots, but their production's unknown. First-year rookies, you don't really know exactly what they're going to do. So if you can take Evan Ingram, a known commodity who last year had a great year, is set up to have a good year this year, why not? And he's valuable because of that inconsistency of that position at tight end, right? He's on a team that shows that they want to involve him, and not just as a blocker. So that's kind of why I've got him in that sell range. If you've got him on your team and you want to kind of maybe get a little bit younger at the position. He had spike weeks in week 14 and 16, which I'm sure absolutely endeared him to somebody because that helped their fantasy team in the fantasy playoffs. So you could get some youth at the position for him if you're looking to sell him and trade him. Maybe one of those rookies, maybe a second-year player, like perhaps a Trey McBride. Maybe, right? Trey McBride's going to be in a good spot if Ertz doesn't come back. Terrible offense. But, he would be, a person there a little bit younger. Like I said, and if Ertz come back, that's a little bit different story. Maybe pick somebody else who would be in a similar position. But if you're planning for the future and that other team can get a player that can produce now, why not make that trade? I think that'd be a good spot.
I agree 100%.
Thank
I
you.
also think it was underrated how you were so much meaner to Evan Ingram than Jorge was to DJ Moore. Because imagine being the 16th ranked player at the worst position in fantasy and someone saying, no, that's too high. You should definitely, he's not even that good.
No.
He's even worse. Not even a starter at the worst position in fantasy. Get rid of. And I think you're right. But the point is, if anybody has ever started to have any faith or belief in Evan Ingram consistently producing fantasy points and catching footballs, then I agree. You should sell. But it was still pretty mean.
Oh, I'm sorry, Evan Ingram. You're a very nice person.
Wait, does that mean I'm off the hook now, or am I still in trouble? I don't understand.
No, you're still in trouble. You're definitely still in trouble.
Fair enough. Okay, let's check.
Yeah, you're just
Oh,
crushing guys from the University of Maryland. You're still in trouble, Jorge.
I'm a Terp, and I feel bad about. I don't feel bad, but I'll say I feel bad. How about that?
Crushing
Very
turtles like Mario.
Oh, well, Heath, I want to tell you, thank you so much for spending your evening with us. Just appreciate the time that you've spent tonight. This has been so great. Guys, make sure that you are following Heath over at Heath Cummings Sr. on Twitter. Heath, before you go, tell us what you're working on right now.
Well, thank you for asking. We actually just launched a couple of months ago, and I referenced it earlier, Fantasy Football Today Dynasty. It's a Tuesday YouTube show that is now also showing up in our Fantasy Football Today podcast feed. We go every Tuesday at 11 a.m. and talk about trade charts and rankings, risers and fallers, mock drafts, have guests as often as we can. It's been a whole lot of fun.
Nice. Awesome. So, guys, again, thank you again, Heath. This has been a really good time tonight. Guys, make sure that you're following everybody on Twitter. You can see all of our Twitter handles here on the screen, but if you are listening and not watching, you can follow Tyler at FF Tyler Heil. You can follow Jorge over at Jorge B. Edwards. You can follow me at Stacy_Perez 83 at fantasyandframes.com. Hit that subscribe button on our YouTube. Guys, we will see you all next week. Thank you and have a great night.